Okay, I think we're ready.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted. Yep, I was working for the railroad and I had a deferment because it was an essential industry. But all my friends were going into service and having lots of fun, so I said, yeah, I'll sign up. So I wanted to get in the Air Corps because they said if you enlisted, then you could choose anything you wanted. So, of course, I ended up in the infantry, which is the ground troops.
How old were you when you enlisted?
20.
Why did you want to join the military?
I wanted to fly airplanes.
Yeah. What branch of the military did you serve? Oh wait, infantry.
Infantry.
The 103rd Infantry Division.
Okay.
Did you have a choice in that, or they just put you where they need you?
No, you just get assigned automatically.
Do you?
Did you have any prior knowledge of what was going to happen on D-Day, or was it like secretive?
No, I had been in the National Guard when I was in high school, but and that was in the field artillery. But I moved out of the state, moved to Utah, so they released me, and I didn't have any experience about what I was about to do.
When did you arrive following the initial invasion, and what was your mission when you arrived?
What, you say, when did I arrive?
And what was your mission?
Why don't you come over here? I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
When did you arrive, and what was your mission when you
Arrive in the military service?
In France, like
when?
Oh,
as
in
far as
France.
D-Day. When did you arrive after the
Let's see,
initial
it was about a
invasion?
month after D-Day, I think. Yeah.
And what was your mission at that point? After you arrived, what did they tell you your mission was?
Well, I started out in Camp Roberts for my training. I was there for 3 months. And then we went across the ocean on a big superliner. And after we got there, they said, okay, you're in the... Then we went to what's called a replacement depot, where they take everybody that comes in, then they assign them to certain places. When I got to France, they said, okay, you're in the 103rd Division.
Okay.
Where did you land?
Like what beach? What beach were you at?
We landed at Liverpool, then took a train across England, and then took a boat from England over to France, and we landed right at Utah Beach. Le Havre was the landing place, but it was right next to the beach.
What did you see when you landed? I mean, what's your memory of what you saw?
It was a battlefield. The beach was covered with, they call it detritus. That's the junk that's left over from the Army. A lot of rusting tanks and other kinds of vehicles. A lot of barbed wire. Of course, most of the Army stuff and all, of course, there was no men there. No bodies, nothing like that. It had all been cleaned up.
What were your emotions during the Normandy invasion?
What was that one?
What was your emotions during the Normandy invasion?
My emotions? Well, I was just kind of amazed. I couldn't believe that little place had such terrible consequences. We lost something like 12,000 men, and it was the jumping off spot, of course, for going into France and starting across the country. So, but I didn't know what to expect. I was a civilian, almost.
Did you engage in actual combat?
Oh yes, that was my job. Yeah. They put us on a train, and as soon as we landed, these little old European trains, they have 4 wheels on the cars, and the cars were made for either 8 horses or 40 men. And we drove all the way across France in those little train cars, and then unloaded on the east part of France, next to the big mountain range, the Vosges Mountains, which is right next to Switzerland and Germany. And that's where it began. And I was assigned to an infantry squad. Said, here's your rifle. There were 12 men in a squad, and they started, well, they had already been in one battle when I got there, so everybody was inexperienced, I would say. They really didn't know what to expect, even the people that I was with, because most of them had not been in battle very long. This was a replacement group that was starting out with another troop that already existed.
So how long did you actually engage in combat? How long were you there?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah, let's see. When we first started out, we were there for 130 days on the front line before we ever got pulled back out of the action. And then we stayed there through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all the rest, of course, the next summer.
Did you have some close calls? I mean, any close call to you getting shot or anything?
Oh, sure. That's what the infantry did. No, my Purple Heart came when the Germans, that we were just across the valley from us, and every day they would shoot a few artillery rounds, and I was standing up on the road taking my exercises, of course, you know, after a night's sleep, or kind of sleep. And they saw us, so they shot about 4 or 5 times, and I got hit with a piece of shrapnel from the artillery. They had the best cannon in the whole war was a German 88 millimeter cannon, which was bigger than our 75 millimeter cannon, very powerful. And of course, when it hit, I was kind of lucky because it went right over my head and hit in the embankment on the road right next to me, and then exploded out again. So I hit the dirt, was laying on my face, covering up, and shrapnel come up and hit me in the arm right here.
What was a typical life for a soldier? A typical day as is like that?
Well, let's see. At nighttime, we watched the star shells going off when they shoot them up in the air to light up the area. And almost all of the time we were in foxholes, which is a little hole about the size of a bathtub that we dug in the ground. And we tried to, that would give us protection from fire that came across closely. And the trouble we had in some cases was we were in a place where there were about a bunch of trees, and the shells would hit up in the tree and explode, which made them shoot shrapnel all over the area. And that usually wouldn't last for long, about 10, 15 minutes. It seemed like an hour and a half, but we'd hear the artillery, then it would stop, we'd get up, everything was calm, so we had breakfast. They came along and threw a little box of K rations in our foxhole, And K rations, the thing get always gone. They were always pretty much alike, but they always had 4 cigarettes, a pack of matches, and some chocolate bars that tasted like wax candles. And we had a lot of fun because my partner and I did not smoke, so we took our cigarettes, and we had a lieutenant who was a chain smoker. So when we'd see him coming, we'd take our cigarettes out, shred them, throw them on the ground just before he got to us. He got a little upset about that.
Did you have church services at all? I mean, probably
Not till the war
not
was
really. Yeah, not right.
Yeah, yeah.
How long did it take to march through France?
To march? Like going on a march? Well, we went on several of them, about 25 miles. And we usually marched at night. It was pitch dark. And it was snow on the ground, usually mud. And we marched 10 feet apart, so we wouldn't have much chance of hurting too many people if we got hit. And we marched without stopping for 25 miles. Let's see, how's that? About 5 hours, something like that.
Where did you arrive in Germany?
Where?
Yeah.
Let's see, there was a little Switzerland and France and Germany all kind of came together close to where we were. We were near Strasbourg in France, and we went from there up to the German border, which was well, maybe 40 miles or so. We walked up there, but that was not all in one walk. It took us a couple of days to get there. And we found the German border was a little creek that went along through the woods, and that's all there was to it. And of course, on the other side of the creek was the Siegfried line, and these were big concrete block houses about the size of this room, or a little bigger. They had slits where the cannons could shoot out of, and the walls were about 3 foot thick. So unfortunately, when we were walking, we were not really expecting any combat, but when we stepped across that little creek on the German border, the first one across was Max Seeley from Roosevelt, Utah, our platoon sergeant, and he got a bullet hole right square in his forehead. He was about that far away from me.
Wow.
So that was the German border. And then we were, we kind of went back and forth between France and Germany. This was in the Alsace-Lorraine area, where the Germans had taken the land away from France because they thought that it was supposed to be German territory, and it really belonged to France after the First World War.
Did you help liberate any concentration camps?
Well, I only saw one concentration camp, and that was Dachau, and we got there after it was liberated. And it was still filled with a bunch of prisoners, hundreds of them. And this is Dachau, Germany, and they had the cells enough for thousands of people. About 4,000 people, I think, were in there. Most of them were Jews, and they had these big, they had a shower house. They would take these people and say, okay, it's time to get cleaned up. So everybody go to the showers. So they would take a whole bunch of people in the showers and lock all the doors so they couldn't get out. Then they turn on the showers, and gas came out instead of showers. And so it killed them all. And just outside of that was a a line of about 5 furnaces, and they could shove the bodies in, and just in a matter of a couple minutes, the bodies would be burned up, and then they rake the ashes out and throw somebody else in. And they killed thousands and thousands of people that way. They had this interesting little thing. They had some big barrels out there, and they would take these ashes out, the people's ashes, and throw them in the barrels. And then if their relatives ever called to or wrote to them and said, "We'd like the ashes of our grandfather or our mother or whoever," and say, "Okay," they'd take a little jar like a fruit jar, dip it in the tub, screw the lid on, and mail it to them.
Wow.
Of course, they had no idea whose ashes they were, but they were ashes.
Yeah. So what was your job at that point when you went into there?
My job?
I mean, what did the military, were they helping to?
Well, they had taken out almost all of the prisoners by the time we got there. The American Army had taken them out. And when I got there, they were in the process of beginning the cleanup. And we got some interesting things I'll show you if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Some of the things I got there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Now or later.
Do you want to have him show you, Chase?
I think you're out of time, aren't you?
Oh, no. No, we got.
Should we do
Yeah,
that?
why don't you finish your questions and then we'll look at them. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Okay. Did you get to meet Eisenhower or General Marshall?
No, I never did see those two. Our commander, our division commander, was General McAuliffe. And you might remember he was at Bastogne when the people were surrounded by the Germans at Christmas time.
Oh,
And he was the one, they kept sending, the Germans would send notes over with a white flag and say, "Surrender, surrender." And McAuliffe wrote a piece of paper and put "nuts" and sent it back to him. And the Germans said, "What's that? What's that?
What is
What do you
nuts?"
mean? What are you talking? What are they doing?" And they had no idea what nuts meant. So he just said nuts. Well, anyway, after that, he was transferred to our division as our division commander. And he shook my hand.
was that the time when they actually ceased fire and spent Christmas together? Do you remember that story?
No.
That wasn't, that wasn't that time.
That was really in World War I,
Oh, it was World War
in the
I?
Battle of the Barn.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was thinking that was World War
They
II.
started singing Silent Night.
Right, that one.
The Americans started it, and then the Germans started singing Silent Night, and pretty soon both sides were singing clear and beautifully.
Right.
And after the song, they ran out and shook hands out in the middle of the field. Then they went back and started shooting at each other.
But that was
Last
World War
Christmas.
I, huh?
Yeah, that was World War I. My uncle was there, however.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting. That's quite a story.
yeah.
Did you agree that the U.S. should have invaded Europe?
Did I what?
Agree that the U.S. should have invaded Europe?
Agree about what the United States did?
Being involved, did you think the U.S. should have been
Oh.
involved?
Well, of course. Because if the United States hadn't have gone in, they would have lost the war. Because England was almost completely knocked out of the battle. And France was already surrendered. And so it was just between between England and the United States. And when the United States got there, that changed the whole thing. So I guess it's a good thing we went in.
Can you describe the Normandy invasion?
The Normandy invasion?
Yeah.
Oh heavens, everybody has seen that. I watched it on television. No, it's the biggest movement that's ever taken place. They landed, 300,000 Americans and British and what was the other one? Belgium. They all landed at once on D-Day, and it was a huge thing. There were so many ships in there that in fact, they hit a couple of them together and sank them. So it was just a huge mix-up, but must have been impressive. I know because I watched the movie.
What did you do in the invasion?
Did I do where?
What did you do, like, when you got there? Did I already answer that question?
About what?
Like, when you got there, what did you do? Like, did you...
What was my job?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. After I'd been there for a few months, they made me a squad leader. That means I had 12 men in my squad, scouts, riflemen, automatic riflemen, and ammunition bearers, 12 people. They all had a specific job to do, and my job was to take them where they wanted me to take them. And then almost every night we would go out on a scouting trip. They'd take 3 or 4 men or 5 or 6 men sometimes, and we'd go over into the enemy lines and wait until we got shot at, and then we'd go back and report where the shots came from and any action that we saw on the enemy thing. That was our biggest normal time. We did that almost every night. And then our orders came down from the Army headquarters. Eisenhower was the one that was the big chief. And if he said, move up into this area, that's fine, move the whole division. The 3rd Army was General Patton's army, old blood and guts Patton, and we were right next to him. So when Bastogne happened, they called his army, and they moved his whole army up there to rescue those guys that were in Bastogne. And they moved us up to take his place. So we ended up just moving into his army place. So that's how they kept things going. Fortunately, we didn't go to Bastogne.
I think you covered it. Sounds like Heavenly Father kind of preserved you a bit, huh?
Oh, many, many times. I had some very difficult circumstances, and there were times when I got down on my knees and thanked Him for the protection that He's given to me. Thanked Him for taking care of my family while we were away. I was not married, of course, but my mother and father were living in Missouri and having a kind of a tough time. And they didn't know what was happening, so I felt bad about that. But one time, Christmas time, I wrote a letter about Thanksgiving time, and I said, Christmas is coming up, so why don't we all have a prayer together? So they thought that was a great idea. So they said, okay, 11 o'clock on Christmas morning, all of us in our family will be having prayers in Missouri, and you can have your prayer in France. And I thought that was a great idea. Made me feel a little closer.
Absolutely.
And we used to get mail from them. Usually we get mail about once a month. So that was nice.
What was your highest position like in the military?
My highest position?
Yeah.
Staff sergeant.
And how many men, if you're staff sergeant, how many men do you oversee?
That's 12 men.
That's the 12, okay, that's
Yeah.
the battalion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then platoon sergeant has 4 squads. The squad has 12 men. Platoon sergeant has 12 squads. And then the company has 4 platoons. So you see it gets bigger and bigger.
How long total did you stay in Europe? For what period of time?
Let's see, I got there and in the fall. Oh, I think I was there 13 months.
13 months?
Yeah, actually, that's right. They figured it out because I got home in August.
And then did you stay in the military a little longer after that, or?
No, we went directly to the centers, let's see, anyway, to where they released us from the Army. I was sent to Texas, and then Arkansas, and then, let's see, yeah, there's 2 camps in Arkansas, and I was released there. And that was August, I don't know, in middle of August sometime.
So did you spend a total of 4 years? Was it a 4-year?
Oh, no.
Oh, it wasn't like a 4-year enlistment thing?
No. See, I went in 1944, and the war ended in 45.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't even 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So any other memory stands out about D-Day in your mind?
I was in Camp Roberts at that time, and we were listening to the radio a little bit, and they told us about D-Day, and we really didn't pay any attention to it.
Didn't realize how it would affect you.
Yeah, we were too busy. They were training us. And training camp, you start out with you taking care of your equipment, then they give you a rifle and a canteen, and we went for machine gun training. We went a lot of rifle practice on the targets, and throwing hand grenades. It was kind of a busy time. We learned a lot of things, and a lot of we never did use before. Hand grenades and rifles is about all we ever used. Then we had a machine gun with us, but they were always behind us.
How about being in France? Any other memories that stand out?
Oh, that was beautiful.
Was it pretty country?
Oh, I had no idea what beautiful country it was. Everything was green, everything was growing nicely, and we went up to the Vosges Mountains, and that was part of the Alps, the Swiss Alps, and gee, the trees were always clean. They had no underbrush. Everybody cleaned out the forests to use for firewood. So the forests were always clean, and when the snow came, that was beautiful, temporarily. Made it harder to sleep in the snow. We slept in houses part of the time. If there was a little village or something around, we never went into a city until after the war, and then I went to Paris on my way home. And but I remember climbing up a mountain, and we ran into a huge, beautiful castle. You kind of read about it in the fairy tales, with tall towers and beautiful old stone walls. And it was way up on the top of the mountain. You could look across the mountain and see the country way over on the other side. It was just really nice.
Hard to imagine that there was a war going on, I guess, huh?
Well, while we were climbing that mountain, we went up this little mountain, a hill, a low mountain. And we were walking up to the top, and we were looking for enemy. And just as we got to the top of the hill, here came some guys up from the other side, and it was a German patrol, just like our patrol. They were coming up the other side, and we met right at the top. So, we'll hand the Hulk with their housen. Get your hands up. Don't shoot. So, the Germans all laid their rifles down. We captured the whole bunch. And it was kind of sad because we lined them up on the road and searched them. And there was a little kid, I thought he was about 14 years old, a little German. And he was shaking and tears were coming out. And he was scared to death. And so we were trying to be nice to him. So I started to search him and I found this bulge in his pocket. I said, what's this, what's this? He said, Nick schießen, don't shoot, don't shoot. So I reached in and pulled it out. It was a nice little pistol. And they had told him that if they ever find you with a weapon, the Americans would kill you on the spot. So I took his pistol and he thought he was going to get killed. But gee, I patted him on the back and said, no. So, nein, du bist ein guter Soldat. And he didn't really believe us. And of course, they all had their hands on their heads like this. So we marched him off to the military police. Got rid of him, but it was, man, I tell you, I really felt bad. Because those guys were so scared. There were some old men there, looked like they were 60 years old. And these young kids, they were having a hard time finding good soldiers by that time. But it was still a beautiful country. We climbed up another mountain and looked down, way down in the valley down below us, and there were crossroads there like this, and two of the main crossroads. And there must have been 50 vehicles that were all piled up there because they all came together and they got in this huge traffic jam. All of them were on fire, smoking, all their ammunition was blowing up. There were dozens of horses lying there dead, and a lot of men that were laying there. It was a terrible sight, and I thought, you know, what a horrible thing to see in a place like this. So, but that was about the time the Germans were, actually they were trying to escape. And they got in this traffic jam, and it was horrible. So, what beautiful country, and why they had to do that, felt bad about it.
Must have been exciting when you heard that they had surrendered.
Yeah. It went on for about a month. We started collecting more and more prisoners. Prisoners would come in 3 or 4 at a time, and every time we went out and we'd capture a couple of them and bring them in and ask them what's going on. But about the time we hit that crossroads, they were trying to escape from all over. Sometimes they just jump out of their tanks and run away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I remember seeing a line of prisoners. There must have been 500 of them walking down the road, headed for the Americans. So, kind of a sad time for everybody.
For sure. Amazing. Do you have any other questions, son? You've got a living legend right here.
You're televising that?
Well, bits and pieces of it he
Oh.
might include in, his documentary that
yeah.
he's making.
I was going to show them that German.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, okay. You want to see some of this junk?
Mom, just turn it off.
Well, I want to film this too.
I'll get the, what's the camera?
Let me, get the camera and take
Oh,
a picture,
okay.
would you?
Oh.